The famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway is set to write another chapter in its century-long history books, with qualifying set to come here for the third edition of the Indianapolis 8-Hour. Hello and welcome to Indianapolis, Indiana. My name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish is alongside, and Bob Varsha also joins me in the broadcast booth. Amanda Busick is down in the pit lane as we get ready for qualifying for the final round of Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, and the penultimate stop for Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli. 25 GT3 cars across multiple classes, but all running to the same spec and same BOP, are set to go for a three-driver qualifying format. The average time across the three drivers from each of their best laps, that's what we'll be taking a look at when this all ends, and the top 10 then advance to Pole Shootout later tonight, Calvin. It is a fascinating format that the drivers love because every element of the driver lineup plays a part.
You do. So all three drivers have a 15-minute session each. There's a 7-minute and an 8-minute break in between the two sessions, or the breaks respectively. And no fuel can be added, so the car's going to be a little bit heavier on the initial run here, so maybe some performance delta there. And then you get that third driver in with a lighter fuel load and maybe a little bit more lap time available to them. And the top 10 then go forward to that Pole Shootout here a little bit later in the day. So the top 10 could get shuffled, but essentially positions 11 through 25 will be set by this qualifying session right now.
And based on what we saw in that practice earlier today, or the pre-qualifying, 10 cars within a half second at the top of the list, 20 cars within 1 second. This is going to be really close. And that three-driver approach keeps the drama going until the third guy gets his laps in.
It is an interesting format, that's for sure. Each driver with 15 minutes on track. This track layout, by the way, 2.44 miles, 14 turns. This is back to the original layout that was used in the inaugural Indy 8-Hour that has typically been used for the IndyCar race on the road course here, and the NASCAR races here this weekend too. Slightly different than what was used 1 year ago, but back to that original track layout, and it is fast around this place. Two long straightaways into heavy braking zones at the end of the front stretch and down Holman Boulevard into turn 7.
I should point out, I should correct myself. You need to wait until that third driver gets his or her laps in. You just saw some at the 10, an owner driver in this series, and there are a handful of other female drivers, and very good ones, it should be noted.
Aaron Vogel, Taylor Hagler, Christina Nielsen, to name 3, and Ashton Harrison as well, who has a chance to win the Pro-Am Championship in the North American Series, which is all wrapped up with Intercontinental GT Challenge this weekend. I'll tell you, our calculators are working overtime trying to stay on top of the different point scenarios with multiple championships, different points formats set to be dictated here this weekend. Just to give some idea, it's double points for the Americans for the American championships, but traditional points pay out for the Intercontinental side of things.
Yeah, and that's significant. For example, we were just on board with the CrowdStrike entry there of George Kurtz. They come into this championship round 14 points out of the lead. Well, that's the delta between first and second, so that is enough to seal them the title on the countback with tiebreakers. So they win here in Pro-Am for the American Championship. They win the championship.
Here is Aaron Vogel aboard the real-time racing Acura NSX GT3 Evo. Not been the season that she and Michael Cooper were hoping for, but they can turn that around here this weekend, drafting in Taylor Hagler, a graduate of the GT3 Academy that HPD has put on here stateside the last couple of years, and a 2-time now touring car champion here in North America in TCR. So she knows this car, she knows this track, and she'll be joining Aaron Vogel and Michael Cooper. They've got big-time hopes that this could be their breakout weekend.
This is down into turn 12. Then you see these switchbacks here. You've got to be super patient and compromise your lines through here a little bit. Really set up to get out onto the speedway with maximum efficiency and not having to crack the throttle right here.
First flying lap starting to pop up on the timing screens. In the early going, Chris Cognazzi has the fast time, but he's supplanted by Chandler Hull and in turn by Samantha Tan. That's Tan, Hull, and Vogel now. 1, 2, and 3. Tan to the inside of Vogel, which will compromise this lap. 25 cars, no GT4 cars this year, so that should give everyone ample room on track to find the space they need to turn in a good flyer.
This is Michael Dinan, driver number 1 for the Turner Motorsports team. They held the top spot until very late in the going in this morning's pre-qualifying session, which is essentially a 90-minute practice session for these teams and drivers to get finally dialed in for this quali here right now. So they have a very fast BMW here. And Michael Dinan and Robbie Foley been running together for the full season. They got John Edwards, BMW factory pilot, drafted in as the 3rd driver in their lineup this weekend, so absolutely stacking the deck.
Ashton Harrison now has gone P1. So Harrison, Tan, Harward, the top 3, but still very early in the going.
Yeah, there's some 3 seconds off the fastest time of the day, which was turned in by Laura Spinelli aboard the number 6 US Racetronics Mercedes AMG this morning at a 122.377. But now we're getting some times more representative. Westphal to the top of the 24.4.
Spirizuli has a good lap going. He caught traffic there at the end, but it wasn't enough to keep him from going P1 for the Conquest Racing team. Ferrari, for now, holds down the top spot.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a threat here. Very, very quick. 3 very fast drivers. Coming off a great weekend on debut at Sebring just 2 weeks ago.
Spirizuli back to the top.
Vautier jumps to 2nd. He's got the fastest middle sector, but he finds himself some 0.7 of a second off of Spirizuli's 22.8. Jeff Westphal, no stranger to the Ferrari, but this is the previous generation Evo on this particular Ferrari 488. The others are up to 2022 spec, or 2020 spec, excuse me. This is the previous version of the Evo on the 488. They've been looking for pace. This car he shares with Ryan Briscoe and Jarrett Andretti.
Great to see the Andretti name back here at the Speedway. As you said, struggled for pace yesterday. There were some talks of maybe a BOP, balance of performance adjustment, for the older spec Ferrari. We still need to get clarification on that, whether there were any adjustments last evening, because they certainly seem a bit sharper here today.
In fact, Westphal goes to P2, still half a second off of Spirizuli's time. It was Mercedes' quickest in that practice that preceded qualifying, or I should say in pre-qualifying that preceded qualifying. That effectively turns into a practice now that we know we will set the grid via qualifying here in this session. But that was the US Racetronics team that set that time with Laura Spinelli, who I imagine we'll be seeing later in the going. He has been awesome in qualifying in the North American Fanatec GT Championship. Also awesome, Andrea Caldarelli behind the wheel of a Lamborghini. Turns in a good lap there, jumps to 4th, but still 0.6 off of Spirizuli.
Yeah, and I think he was the biggest surprise, or that team was, in terms of that pre-qualifying. Only 19th fastest here this morning, so they're trying to get that black Lamborghini. Oh, and there's the green one. Very wide there. Frank Pereira using every inch of the road there as he hustles that Lamborghini through turn 11.
Turn 10, he just went a little wide, had a decent first sector, a personal best, sets the new fastest middle sector though, and is right there on the pace by virtue of what he did in the middle of the track. Now, what does he give up? Somebody else just reset it. It's Jules Gounon who's got a flyer brewing, but let's look and see what Frank Pereira can do on his lap.
3rd.
Jumps to 3rd at 123.2, but as you said, Gounon is on a monster of a lap here aboard the number 33 Winward Racing Machine.
Oh, but the red comes out.
Oh, no.
What terrible timing for Gounon. We'll see how much did he back out of it. He still is in the 2nd position, 69 thousandths behind Spirizuli. This is the cause.
I don't think it is either.
This is the cause of the red. TR3 Lamborghini, Jeff Burton. Oh, and look, US Racetronics. That's the car that was fastest in pre-qualifying. They're involved.
Can you believe it? We keep talking about what can get in the way of this team winning a race, typically as during the race itself, not in terms of actually setting up for the race with a qualifying run here.
Oh, contact Vautier into Burton, and this has big implications for both of these cars because it is a 3-driver average. If you only have 1 or 2 drivers set a time, you find yourself basically behind in the pecking order relative to those that had all 3 of their drivers run as Vautier takes a look at the damage he's incurred.
Former series champion, 3rd driver with this team.
Can repair damage on the cars. Very limited what you can do during these qualifying sessions, but you are allowed to repair damage, replenish fluids, but the key is going to be how excessive that damage is as he walks back to have a chat here with Jeff Burton. I'm not sure that one essentially went down, whether Jeff just checked up a little bit and caught Tristan unawares as he was right under his tail there.
A lot of debris on the racetrack. This is going to take a while.
And the clock continues to roll here, so that's important. Keep in mind, a couple of cars have yet to set times in this session. Kenny Hobble, for instance, for Sun Energy 1, that is one that has yet to set a time. They've got big plans trying to win an IGTC championship in their class this weekend. The Craft Bamboo Mercedes has yet to set a time. That's got Marciello behind the wheel as Vautier expresses his displeasure. Pierre Raga in one of the AF Corsa Ferraris. In fact, both AF Corsa Ferraris, 51 and 71, have not set a time. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's the same for them as it is for these two that were caught up in this accident. If you don't have a time to add to the average, you will be then compared to others that have used the same number of drivers in order to set your grid spot.
You see it again. It was just like he basically ran over him, but, you know, both cars should have been accelerating there. Shouldn't have been any decel on Jeff Burton there, Amanda.
Well, we've seen this team, no stranger to heartbreak, US Racetronics. Amanda, what are you seeing down in their pit box?
Well, I think you're seeing a live shot of Steven shaking his head, and you see your teammate walking down the track, looking over the damage of the Mercedes. What's going through your thoughts as you see this unfold?
Well, it is what it is. You know, every single weekend we have a really fast car and something happens, and I guess our luck is still continuing out to Indy 8 hour, and we just can't catch a break, I guess. You know, it's really unfortunate. Just hoping both drivers are okay. We'll see what we can do with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left, but it's not looking too bright right now.
It does look like the team is packing up here. Is that kind of the assumption that I guess the car is done for the day?
Yeah, it looks like it. I think repair-wise it'll be too much to try and do, so it'll probably be us starting in the back of the pack for the race. So, but it is what it is. You know, we have a whole 8 hours ahead of us.
They keep having to focus forward. It's just been an incredible season, a catalog of things that have gotten in their way of getting the big victory. But who knows? Strange things happen, right? You're in great shape in a race that keeps going away from them. Maybe having a problem so early, but Tristan is absolutely beside himself, it seems, as Laura Spinelli.
He still seems hot.
Yeah, he's very hot.
Officials keep turning him away from having that chat with Jeff Burton that you mentioned.
Well, in Amanda's chat with Steven this morning, he did allude to the fact that when something new happens, like, oh, okay, here we go again. I mean, in some respects, at least he's prepared emotionally for this, and you can tell he's already moved on to tomorrow, which is the outlook you must have. But it is unreal just how many times that team has proven to be snake-bitten in Fanatec GT World Challenge America this season.
A few teams, I think, gamble, Bob, by not going out immediately like the AF Corsa cars, and this could catch them out a little bit because the clock is continuing to run. That could dramatically affect your average if you've got basically either 0 lap on the board or a very poor one like a warm-up lap.
Well, again, the 0 lap, effectively, they have to average the 2, and you're behind any team that ran all 3 drivers. And then they'll compare you to others that, for whatever reason, only run 2 or only run 1, whatever the case may be. And there are fast cars that lost out on that gamble. I guess the thought is you want to go when the track's at its best, the tires can take full advantage of it, but this is the risk.
Yeah, and also I think we're going to see some adjustments. I'm pretty sure that Gunon's time came up after the red was already displayed, so I don't think that's going to go down here. I think he was 3rd or 4th.
I think so,
he was
too.
getting down to time that we're seeing on the board right now.
Our friend Marshall Pruitt, a very active reporter, journalist, podcaster, you name it, photographer. He likes to refer from time to time to the cartoon anvil that falls out of the sky on one team or individual or another, and I think that's a pretty apt description of the season Racetronics have had.
Good news is it is a long race. They have speed as proven in pre-qualifying. This is the ST Racing car, racing for IGTC points in the silver class here this weekend. And something appears to be amiss. Samantha Tan started this machine. She was 15th overall, but that crew pushing her backwards down the pit lane. That's not usually a good sign. Looking at the performances we've seen registered so far, Spirazzulli, Conquest Racing, unbelievable what they've done in just their second weekend with this GT3 car in terms of a competitive weekend. At least they've done some testing, but running at Sebring 2 weeks ago, part of the American Championship, and now here in this Indy 8-hour. At Gunan lap, that's good enough for second right now. We'll have to see how the stewards view that because it did look like the red was out before that lap was set. Pereira, Westphal, that's maybe the story here, is how strong the Vital Speed Andretti Autosport Ferrari has proven to be after struggling for the bulk of the weekend in testing and then in practice yesterday and this morning.
Yeah, big turnaround overnight. So again, we're trying to get clarification on if there was a BOP adjustment on the older generation of the Ferrari. This is a team that's got a good lap on the board. We're waiting to see whether that fast lap gets thrown out, but I think he's still going to be at least in the top 5. I'm pretty sure when I glanced up, he was 3rd or 4th and jumped to 2nd with that last lap as the red was displayed before he got to the stripe.
But if we're talking about averages here, the fact that Spirazzulli and at least for now Gunan, they are significantly ahead of the next closest. We're talking 4/10 back to Pereira in 3rd, a half a second to Westphal 4th, etc. That's a big hole to have to climb out of now for the 2nd and 3rd drivers and everyone in every car further down that list.
Let's not forget, though, it's only the top 10. It's like Formula 1. Once you get into that top 10, all the times go away and it's just the single driver Pole Shootout. So the key is that cutoff. You got to get your averages into that top 10 to have a shot at it this afternoon.
Everybody looking for pole glory later today at IMS, 4:55 to 5:10. That sounds like the old famous happy hour time for Indy 500 qualifying, where
good point.
The sun goes down and the shadows creep over the front stretch and track temperatures are at their best. We'll see a little happy hour tonight, sports car edition.
Someone who's not cool is Tristan Vautier.
No.
He was all fired up. And he knows, you know, when you come in as a 3rd driver on these weekends, it's not so much, it's not like they're in championship contention, so a little less pressure when you come on if there's a championship on the line and you join a team. But to bring him in and to be the one that's involved in an incident, whether it was his fault or whether Jeff was at fault there, we still don't have a really good shot to see how it got to the point where they made contact. It's disappointing, and you know, he's a good friend of the Aga Khanis, and they like him. They know he's got brilliant pace in one of these Mercedes, so he's a great fit, but it's all gone a bit pear-shaped on them.
Did you have a read on the incident, Cal?
It just looked to me like he had a run and expected Jeff to just keep with the speed, and maybe Jeff just had a moment, was just trying to gap himself in traffic or whatever. But it's a corner where you shouldn't be losing any speed on the exit off. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Given that this track is so flat and most of the corners are so open, you can see, as a driver, a good ways around the corner. So, although I'm sure Tristan Vautier was surprised to see Jeff Burton sitting there, I gotta believe he had a pretty good look at him before he clouded him.
I would think that he was expecting to run through that corner and just pop out as they exited the corner, and I think there must just been an adjustment in speed where he just literally plowed over the top of him and hit him pretty hard.
Went for a spot on the track that he thought Burton wouldn't be in by the time he got there. We've already had a car nicked for a pit lane speed violation, Scott Smithson. How do you handle that in terms of driver lap times?
Well, the penalty is a drive-through penalty, and I wonder, does that carry over to the next driver then?
I got a feeling it would.
Yeah, somebody's got to do the drive-through.
But it was a good qualifying, actually, for Scott. Top AM-class car and 11th overall. The checkered flag is out. And as we've mentioned, a number of big-time teams caught out by that red flag and not getting to turn a representative lap time. AF Corsa with both of their cars, Craft Bamboo, and Sun Energy 1-2, which has a lot riding on this weekend, looking to clinch an IGTC championship for a couple of its drivers.
Well, that's going to change the focus on some of these teams who may have been looking at the lineups, the strength of the lineups, pace of the cars, that we're really not in for a chance of being in the top 10. So when you get 3 or 4 of the top entries suddenly eliminated, essentially, they can certainly run they'll continue to run. They'll put out their 2nd and 3rd driver, but as you said, Ryan, they're really battling for that next phase of the qualifying for teams that only got 2 drivers out there.
Exactly. So that suddenly opens up a chance for perhaps a Pro-Am team or even an AM team potentially to crack the top 10 And then when you get in the top 10, you get in that shootout, you could put your hot shoe in if you're a Pro-Am team. And we know the pros in the Pro-Am lineups are just as quick as the pros in the All-Pro lineups. And all of a sudden, now you could have a Pro-Am car starting well up the order, having a huge buffer back to the rest of the cars in their class. As a very annoyed Raffaele Marciello climbs out of his car, having been prevented from setting a representative lap time in that session. Here are the results from Q1. And Pro cars taking the top 6 spots for now. The Windward car still in second. That is one, though, that are going to need a little clarification on. When was that lap set? Was it before the red flag or not? Pereira third, Westphal fourth, Caldarelli and Vautier, but that car will not further participate in the activities today for bringing out that red flag in that collision with Jeff Burton at the TR3 Lamborghini. A little bit further down the order, and at the very bottom, you can see those that were absolutely caught out by that red flag. No times for the final 4 cars.
The 63 car didn't show up on pit lane at all. They had that incident this morning with Assenheimer with some damage, so I assume they weren't able to get the car fixed in prep for quali.
Let's hear from Raffaele Marciello with Amanda.
Rafa, we saw you get out of the Mercedes, undeniably upset about the attempt that you could have had here today. Talking to Danny as he gets ready for his stint, your thoughts on that?
The car is mega, and my balance is really good, yeah.
Does this put you guys behind heading into the race day tomorrow?
No, because they said we'll be only two driver average, so it doesn't matter so much.
Thank you for the update.
All right, well, we're going to need some clarification on that then, because that is not how I read the rule book, at least. So
Who told him that?
Could be a mea culpa on my end. That's certainly not how it's been done.
I don't see how that's going to happen, because...
Yeah, we'll get on that, though, and we'll get an update. Speaking, though, of cars that didn't show up, you mentioned the 63. We saw some smoke coming off of that car this morning in pre-qualifying, and we thought perhaps it was contact that caused that. But evidently it was actually engine damage that was related to a driver hitting a curb last night, and so they had to replace the engine, and as a consequence also had to switch chassis, apparently. So quite a bit going on from what I was told by that DXDT Racing team. So a shame not to see them out there during this qualifying.
Yeah, because when that car was smoking this morning, we couldn't really see any damage. Then there was a report that the car was damaged, but we didn't think when they turned damage that the something maybe been pulled out of a curb or something.
Right. Big damage, just engine, chassis. Tires look good.
Well, long race tomorrow. That's the good news. Highlights from a Q1 session that frankly left us with more questions than answers, I think. This was Frank Pereira running a little bit wide, but he still had a very good lap in this qualifying session for the K-Pax Racing team. Up onto the banking. This is the incident that brought out the red and curtailed the end of the session. Tristan Vautier, Jeff Burton coming together in that run between turn 10 and turn 12. And it caused significant damage to both cars. Neither appears set to further contest qualifying, and now the focus turns on getting those cars repaired and ready to go for an 8-hour race tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm trying to reflect on what Lello said to Amanda there in terms of, no, it's just a 2-driver, but I think he's talking about his own team. I think his teammate said to him it's just going to be the 2-driver average, and maybe Raffaele's thinking, oh, that's cool, we're just changing the rules.
I'm off the hook.
I don't think the other teams that laid down a fast lap would be happy if we suddenly went into something that I hadn't read in the rule book.
Well, we will get to the bottom of that, and as soon as we have clarity, we'll pass it along to you. Apologies for the confusion. But look here, this is neat to see. We mentioned Jared Andretti, part of the driver lineup of this team, but Andretti Autosport also helping to run the car, some of their staff helping this weekend. Of course, they're based just down the road here in Indianapolis, and great to have them active in the Indianapolis 8-hour for the first time. Back down to the pit lane, let's hear from Amanda Busick.
With Cedric Spirazzoli, and you were the driver that took the top spot for driver number 1. How does the Ferrari take so well to IMS?
Look, so far so good. It's been a good start of qualifying. I can't complain about this one. And now let's see what my teammates are going to do for Q2 and Q3. And obviously the goal now is just to be for the Super Pole after. So.
Good to hear from Cedric there. So the information that's been passed to us regarding qualifying, we look here at Cedric's lap and catching some traffic at various times during his qualifying attempts. Evidently, what the teams have been told is that if you fail to set a lap, it becomes a 2-driver average. And if like by virtue of running out of time, force majeure effectively not having a chance is at least how it's being explained to be in my headset here. Whereas if you simply do not have a good lap set, that would still count towards the average.
Not quite sure. The problem with that is if you've got a heavily stacked, weighted lineup of 3 drivers and your first driver is not particularly quick, you've gained a huge advantage in terms of that having to be factored into your average over 3 drivers if you've not had to account for your slowest driver.
Right. And how do you decide what a representative lap is?
Yeah. So.
Well, again, that's the message that was conveyed, and we'll seek further clarity, and we'll find out presumably pretty soon as we start looking at some of these averages. At any event, here we go. Q2 is underway. We'll focus on that for the moment. All the cars slowly trundling down the pit lane and making their way back out onto the racetrack for the second of 3 sessions here in qualifying.
Good news for these drivers, the tires are a little bit fresher than maybe they anticipated because the #1 drivers weren't able to do too many.
Right, you got plenty of gas and a good set of tires.
Particularly in this case where they got 0 laps for the 51 and 71 AF Corsa machines.
Great to have AF Corsa here with so much support as ever from Ferrari. Great lineups across the 2 cars. A really good chance to put the prancing horse on the top step of the podium at Indianapolis, which was commonplace in Formula 1, less so in IndyCar racing here at this track.
It should be Nick Whitmer, driver number 2, now on board the 38 machine there with ST Racing. Very fast here yesterday, top 3 of the practice session.
From a phenomenal racing family up in Canada, the Whitmers. He's got brothers who race, he's got parents and uncles, and you name it.
Kuma Whitmer was a big star in IMSA not too many years ago.
I think his granny won a couple of championships. Kidding.
Hockey, too, a big passion of that family, and they've been involved in that sport. Speed, in any event, is in the blood. We'll see what Nick Whitmer can do. Part of that ST Racing team once again. There is Craft Bamboo with the Theodore Racing throwback livery on this car, harkening back to the days when Teddy Yip ran Indy cars in the Indianapolis 500.
Macau casino magnate, a huge race fan, came up with all kinds of enterprising ideas, including the stillborn Hawaiian Super Prix. It's going to be a big bucks-up street race in Honolulu, I believe. And it just never quite came together.
Darrell Young kind of orchestrates this whole team's operation. Pretty handy driver himself, so they've got really experienced team. They're running with the Lone Star Racing operation, who are based here in the U.S., down in Texas. So we're taking advantage of one of the Mercedes domestic teams that we have available for Mercedes AMG, who are in great shape regarding the IGTC Manufacturer Championship this year, Ryan.
Have a chance to wrap it up here 1 round early ahead of the Gulf 12 Hours, which is the finale for Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli this year. Unfortunately, a trip to Kyalami this year was not in the cards, so Gulf 12 Hours slots in, but Kyalami set to return in future editions of the championship. Danny Jucadea, fast Spaniard, big part of the esports competition of GT World Challenge Europe in recent seasons, which pays points to the team's championship in the Endurance Cup these days, the esports competition that they do. And this might be the breakout star of the weekend, Elise De Paul from Belgium. Won the Silver Class Championship at GT World Challenge Europe earlier this year. Big off there for one of the K-Pax cars.
Jordan Pepper behind the wheel right now, so he just needs to slow it down a little bit. Those tires are going to be dirtied up. He won't have the grip. And I think that was through that problem corner that we saw this morning, Bob, coming out of turns 10 and 11, just running a little bit wide. There's still that headwind kind of pushing you off that corner a little bit.
Great look at the speed coming off of turn 14 and onto the front straightaway. 5/8 of a mile in length. Run down to road course turn 1, oval turn 4, diving down off the banking. Here's Daniel Mancinelli, always fast when he gets behind the wheel of a Ferrari. Had a breakout season in North America a few years ago, showed up at St. Pete. Weren't quite sure who he was or where he came from, and he stuck the car on pole, and that set a preview of what was to come that year. Right now, fastest in this session. Number 34 car, at least by average, has the fastest to this point.
Yeah, two pretty sporty laps there with the 122.8 from the first session with Spirituali, and then a 22.7 with Mancinelli, and Balzan is their third. So they're going to be right in the mix there, and then it'll be a question of who gets the nod there for the pole shootout, because they're all seems to be very evenly matched pace-wise.
I've heard that from the drivers. This track sets itself up to be very, very tight in terms of the competition. Just little mistakes or little advantages can make a big difference.
Saw Foley there laid down a 23.2. He was second fastest, I believe, this morning behind Spinelli aboard that Turner Motorsports BMW. He and John Edwards did quali simulation runs with Foley just a tick faster, and I think he may get the nod for the pole shooter if they make it into that top 10 here this afternoon.
It's good enough on average with driver 1 to slot in to the 6th spot. And again, Elise De Paul, the Belgian youngster who has impressed not just in GT World Challenge Europe, but British GT this year too. This is a big chance to make a statement, driving as part of effectively a factory lineup here for AF Corsa.
22.8. Fastest lap of the whole session now goes to Mancinelli at 122.55. So fastest in this session and fastest overall so far. And that, of course, gives that team the average fastest time as well at the moment by a good 4/10 on average. That's a huge number. But as we said, it's all about just getting into that top 10 and then getting that reset.
5 drivers in the 1 minute 22 second zone right now.
Here's Richard Highstand, who joins Bimmer World this weekend. Make that Chandler Hull and Bill Oberlin, the full season drivers. Currently, that is the fastest car by average in the Pro-Am class, 6th overall. Mario Fawnbocker, let's watch him. He's behind the wheel for Racer's Edge.
22.7 for Highstand. That's a very sporty lap, only a couple of tenths off the fastest of the day. And I tell you what, if they can get this Racer's Edge into that top 10 shootout, look out. Mario will be up on the wheel. Had the pole at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca a few years ago.
The California 8-hour North American round of IGTC prior to it shifting here to Indianapolis. Just turned in a 26.1, so that was not a flying lap. Here is Foley.
Personal best in Sector 1. Not his best in Sector 2. I'm not quite sure how quick this lap is going to be. Right now they're running 7th on average overall, so that's enough. And then you got John Edwards, who should certainly be up on the wheel and capable of laying down a fast lap come driver 3 times.
Just watching Robbie Foley on track, he is not intimidated by these concrete walls one bit. He is right out there on the ragged edge.
That lap was 7,000 slower than his previous best, so very consistent, but maybe not the peak lap that he was looking for. And again, the fuel is going to burn off a little bit, but again, you're putting more miles on the tires and all about the pressures. You are allowed to do tire pressure adjustments, but no tire changes during these switchovers between the drivers during this quali session. Davide Rigon behind the wheel of the 51 car, so they're on the back foot by not getting a time in that session one, still trying to determine exactly how it's going to shake out. Marciello had his thoughts on the possibility of still being just a 2-driver average.
Regan third in GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup points this year. Missed the final round of the championship. He's typically teamed with Antonio Fuoco over there. Fuoco ran with a new set of co-drivers at Barcelona last weekend because Regan and Daniel Serra were contesting Petit Le Mans, where it looked like they were set for a class win. They got caught out by a drive time ruling. Did win the Endurance Cup, though.
They won on the road and then had it taken away at the checkered flag, knowing that they were 10 minutes over, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not a small error.
Fuoco came up just shy of winning the Endurance Cup Pro Championship last week.
Keating, good lap here. That is really solid for him, 123.9. Following up on George Kurtz, 125.3. Admittedly, George didn't get a lot of laps to lay that time down, so probably not truly representative to how they compare.
As it stands, the top 5 cars all come from the Pro class. We get to the final third of the second qualifying session. Let's watch Daniel Juncadella here. Fastest time in this session was set by this man and this car, but again, they're trying to overcome the fact that they did not set a time in the first session, and we're still not entirely sure how that is going to affect their ultimate order. So for right now, at least, he's going to push as hard as he can in the hopes that indeed it does become a 2-driver average for them. And that could then put them in a position, that 122.2 that he did in this session here, if it becomes a 2-driver average, that is very good.
The teams have also got to strategize around this running time. They're putting the laps on these tires and taking away the sweeteners for their third driver to go with. So I think if your driver kind of plateaus, bring him in, just rest it for 5 minutes and give that third driver a bit more opportunity with slightly fresher tires for that third run.
So if they don't go to a 2-driver average for the entire field, the best that Danny Juncadella and the rest of the 77 crew can hope for is a P18 start behind all of the 3-driver averages.
Yeah, and importantly out of the pole shootout.
Right.
Need to make the top 10 to have a shot at the pole. Don't see anyone lighting up the timing screens, and I think you make a good point, Calvin, about the sweet spot of these Pirelli tires. We have seen, outside of tracks that are known for high tire wear, Road America and Sonoma come to mind, the Pirellis this season have provided grip across a fairly long stint, so it is possible, but you just don't know how much of the ultimate pace was taken out, you know, with the first driver. How hard were they pushing these tires? What does that leave them to work with for the second and third drivers?
Yeah, Fawnbocker's had a pretty good lap there on his previous one. That was his best. Let's see if he's now got one rolling here as he comes through first sector. No, it's not his personal best, so I don't think he's on a lap that will improve anything.
About half the field in the pits. They have done what they set out to do. Look at this Conquest car, the situation that they find themselves in, assuming it is a 3-driver average. They have a nearly 4/10 of a second advantage over the number 3 K-Pax car, and about the same margin. It's only 0.005 of a second from Pepper in the first of the 2 K-Pax Lambos to Mapelli in the second and overall third-placed K-Pax Lamborghini. So that is a massive gulf for anyone to overcome. Not that it totally matters because Pole Shootout is still to come, but looks like Conquest, at least, if they can just get a decent lap in Q3, should feel very confident of making it through to the shootout.
Yeah, I think the real focus is around like from 9th back to like 12th, 13th. You look at guys like the 0-4 car, they're currently 12th overall with George Kurtz and Keating's times. Can Colin Brown's hot lap leap them into that top 10 potentially? Then here, take over the reins for that Pole Shootout.
It was interesting this morning in pre-qualifying. The 2 K-Pax cars were nowhere near one another in terms of pace. But here they find themselves at nearly identical lap times. Jordan Pepper still out in pursuit of a little bit more speed with just 1 minute and 15 seconds left in Q2.
But curiously, they're having their silver-rated drivers go as driver number 3. So if you think how that stacks up with Misha Goldberg, certainly very fast, but he may not have the pace of one of the other pros. But they're comfortable. All for Misha now, they just need a good solid lap, lock themselves into that top 10. Don't throw it all away by trying to be a bit of a hero and laying a really fast lap down.
That's right. Fawnbocker still pushing, searching. This NSX scored its first ever long-distance race win last weekend. Mario played a big part in that.
23.121 is his previous best. See if he can improve on that at all. Nope, just outside. So he was pushing, and I wasn't seeing any personal best sectors. So surprised they elected to keep pushing and put more laps on those tires, which is going to make it a little bit harder here for Christina Nielsen to wrestle some lap time out of that car. Oh, that was close.
Gravel helps the car rotate.
On board with the Texan, Ben Keating. No stranger to this Mercedes-AMG platform. Spent many years racing it.
Pit lane.
He's done. He knows there's nothing left in that lap at least.
Solid run though, 23.9 for Ben. That is a super lap.
Has them up to 5th in Pro-Am, 12th overall, and now you see what Colin Brown, fellow Texan, can do. Fawnbocker still pushing.
And right now you have the 10th position held by the Triazzi number 13 machine, Grunwald out there right now, and it's going to be Ryan Dial jumping on board that car, and then you're going to have Colin Brown on board the 04 trying to find a significant chunk, because finding if they're 2 or 3 tenths off on average, you need a lot more than just that to average out and leapfrog ahead of that.
Certainly. Looks like everyone has taken the checkered flag or otherwise come to the pit lane. So here we go. After 2 rounds of qualifying, it is Conquest Racing and Ferrari up at the top of the charts with Alessandro Balzan still to go. K-Pax 2 and 3, Windward in 4th. And how about it? Ryan Briscoe, Jeff Westphal, they've done their job to get Andretti Autosport with Vital Speed to 5th. And now it's Jared Andretti's turn looking ahead to Q3. Rest of the order. Pro-Am, so important when you think about the context of the North American Championship, and Fawnbocker did at least get the Racer's Edge car up to 2nd in class and not too far away from the Bimmer World car that currently holds the class pole. 6th overall, thanks to, in this last session at least, Richard Highstand. Here we go. This is Danny Jucadea, who had the fastest lap in that session. Oh, this was an interesting moment for Jordan Pepper, but he kept it pointed straight and was able to set a pretty darn fast lap time.
Yeah, that headwind down the front straightaway turns into kind of pushing that car off turn 11 there, where cars are having issues.
Bobby Foley for Turner and a decent run. Now we look here at AF Corsa. Finally got a chance to see them after they were unable to set a lap in Q1. Apex though on home turf represented the North American Championship very well this year at the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa. But it is Conquest that's showing the way through 2 15-minute qualifying sessions. Alessandro Balzan still to go. That puts them in a great position here to clinch a spot inside the top 10, and with that, a spot in the pole shootout. Still a lot to play for, though, because the bubble, if you will, to make it through into that pole shootout, it is incredibly narrow. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but now let's hear from the fastest man in Q2. He is with Amanda.
When you saw those combined results, you did not see the 77 on there yet. It is our understanding after this qualifying, the combined will pop in for the 77. But Danny, you were able to get the fastest lap here at IMS for driver number 2 by 0.3 of a second. Where did you find that here?
I think it was a very good lap, to be fair. I feel really good in this track, and the car has been strong all weekend. and I just managed to put it all together in that first flying lap. Tires were up to temperature. I felt very good in the car, and I guess that's what makes it such a special lap time.
During the driver change with Morad, was there anything that you relayed to him ahead of his stint?
Sorry, say again?
During the driver change, did you relay anything to Morad ahead of his stint?
Sure. I mean, he's well experienced as well, and he's also feeling very confident in the car. I'm not sure about the regulations, what's happening right now with that messy Q1, but he just needs to get a good lap time on board, and then I think if what I heard is right, we will be through to the top 10.
Well, that is the big if, and we are endeavoring to get a firm answer to that question. Thanks to everyone at Race Control who's tried to help us sift through this. Everyone waiting with bated breath for exactly how this is going to work itself out, Bob, and that's not an easy position to be in because it makes the calculation of what you need or what you don't need that much more difficult if you don't know exactly who's in play.
Right, and where you're going to find whatever time you wind up needing as the session goes on.
Well, we will keep tabs on it as best as we can, but how about this debut, Calvin, for Conquest Racing? They were so strong at Sebring, and for that to carry forward here, the driver lineup is great, and they're familiar with the Ferrari, primarily the Ferrari Challenge car, but to be this on the pace this quickly, I mean, really a remarkable performance.
Just found the sweet spot immediately. Yep. They rolled up at Sebring. We're right on the pace. The drivers did an awesome job that weekend, and they come here, and all three of their drivers obviously got confidence in the car, and you'd expect Balzan to be, if not the quickest, on a slightly lighter fuel load, equal to his two teammates, and they'll be comfortably into that pole shootout top 10. So then it all comes down to who do they give the reins to for that single driver 15-minute session. How do you strategize around that? Do you sort of like get those tire pressures way up there and really bank on a short run, or do you think, okay, we're going to let the fuel burn off a little bit further and pressure them up so they'll come in a little bit later in that run? So lots of strategy to play with when we get to that session later this afternoon.
A moment ago, we saw a look again at the ST Racing BMW, and we had seen them in between Q1 and Q2 being pushed back, and evidently no problems with the car. They had just been released from the pits right when the red flag came out. They weren't allowed on track, so the safest way, you can't reverse down the pit lane. They dispatched the team simply to return that car to the pit box. So Harry Gottsacker will get a chance to qualify that car next for the Canadian team. And we'll see what he can do in his chance for the ST Racing operation. One more time down to the pits. Let's hear from Amanda once more.
And it is Daniel Manchielli's first time here at IMS in competition, and you were second overall there for driver number 2, but the combined result so far puts the 34 at the top. It's the 25th anniversary for Conquest Racing. How important would it be for this team to have the pole at this race?
I think it's very important for us. We are new in this championship. We did pole position with Cedric in the first session, and second session got second. The average is good, and we are looking for tomorrow, to start the front and try to be consistent because 8 hours are very long. I'm very proud to be here with the Conquest team, and they did so great job. And I would like to thank all the crew, Manny, and all of my teammates.
Daniel is appointment television when he's behind the wheel. He's a live wire. You never quite know what you're going to get, but it's always exciting.
How does Eric Bachelard find these guys?
Yeah, well, a lot of them have had great history with Ferrari. Certainly Mancinelli burst on the scene at St. Petersburg, I think 2017, was it, Ryan? When,
sounds right.
With TR3. So we didn't know much about the team coming at Ferrari Challenge. Didn't know anything about Mancinelli, and suddenly this bright yellow Ferrari is fastest. So he got everyone's attention in a hurry.
Exactly. 2017 finished 4th in both the Sprint and Sprint X championships in what was then Pirelli World Challenge at that time for the TR3 racing team. Had a couple interesting co-drivers in Sprint X. One, Nicolo Chiraud, and the other, Andrea Montermini. Not that for a blast from the past. Here we go. Q3 underway at IMS, and everyone gunning for the Conquest car. It's got a healthy margin. Really, though, our eyes are fixed on that cutoff spot. Need to make it into the top 10 to advance to the pole shootout.
I think for Gottsacker in the 38 car, they're currently 11th overall, so they've definitely got a sniff at this to maybe jump in. Whitman did a nice job there in session number 2, backing up Samantha Tan's run from session 1. Colin Brown's got a bit of work to do. He needs to be really, really quick here to bring the team's average up into that top 10. Might be a bit of a tall order.
Cal, in some respects, this is uncharted territory for these drivers qualifying, especially the North American ones, because you're going out low fuel on used tires. That's not something we have seen all season long, so I'm not sure you necessarily know how much to expect, how much grip you think is going to be there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone had their act together enough to put all of those pieces of the puzzle to do a sim run. Typically, you're just sort of like low fuel, new tires is what John Edwards and Robbie Foley did, for example, with their quali sims this morning in pre-qualifying.
Now it all comes down to this to set the top 10, and then from there we'll set those top 10 positions. We can pole shootout 4:55 local time this evening, with the Indianapolis 8-hour coming up tomorrow. Saturday running of the race for the first time. Running into the darkness for the first time. All GT3 for the first time. A lot of exciting things about this 3rd edition of the race.
And it is really dark. That last 45 minutes last night in a session which simulated the last 90 minutes of the race here for tomorrow, with the timing of that, it was pitch black out there in certain corners.
We talked earlier in the day about the 2 GT championships won by Christina Nielsen, who was in that Racer's Edge car. Her partner, her co-driver for both of those titles was Alessandro Balzan.
Wouldn't it be funny if those two end up scrapping with one another at some point in this 8-hour race, in much the same way we've seen with Robbie Foley and Bill Oberlin a few times this year, the teacher and the student trying to see just how well those lessons sunk in.
And we certainly saw it with the KPAC squad with Jordan Pepper and Andrea Caldarelli, who won the championship together last year on North American soil. Won the opening rounds at Sonoma. There was a slight rule change where you couldn't have 2 pros together. You had to have a silver driver in your lineup moving forward, so they got split, and we've seen some, not the tastiest of battles, but certainly the odd occasion line where they've had to go head-to-head.
Well, the duel they had at Road America, remember the move that Pepper put on Caldarelli into turn 5? It was a near-run thing. That could have ended.
They were nearly in the same car together again.
Yes, they were.
But in different cars, so to speak.
So they've had a couple close calls, but a lot of respect between the two earned over the course of last season, running together with the same car, and then reunited along with Marco Mappelli. They all ran together at Spa this year and had a really strong run. Looked like they had pole for that race at one point, and a technical infringement took that away, but raced their way back up to the front before some misfortune ultimately took them out of the running.
Nice lap here by Gottsacker, 123.9, only 4 tenths off of Whitman's time. Set in session 2 in the same car. So Harry does have a little bit of experience in this car. He ran the Spa race in Dubai, 24-hour races, so he's familiar with this M4. Not exactly the same chassis, but same spec of car.
The officials are saying they're investigating contact between the GMG Racing Pro-Am car and the Cameron Racing Pro-Am machine down in turn 1. I don't think we saw that, but we'll see what the stewards decide.
I think that was from back in the previous session in Q2. I believe I saw that up on the screen as we came here to Q3.
Fastest time of the day, Balzan, on 22.0. So the Conquest team continuing to execute, and raising the bar in terms of what everyone has to chase after.
It's just a massive lap. Only a handful of other drivers were in the 122s that last time by. That is rarefied air.
This is time of the weekend.
And we talked about how big their gap to second was. It's gotten bigger. It's now over 0.6 of a second. It was 4 prior to Q3.
Well, they could stop and have an ice cream at this stage because there's no way they're going to drop out the top 10. All you could do is run it off the road and risk the car. So, not sure what else you've got to prove at this stage.
Right now, on the cutoff spot, on the bubble, is Ryan Dial, number 13 Triarci Competizione car. And with that, I say it, and he gets bumped out of the top 10. Colin Brown has jumped up into the 10th spot. That's the average, that's the aggregate between the 3 drivers, and that now changes. Halen moves down to the bubble.
Yeah, but DL's yet to lay down a super fast time, a representative time. He's about a second off Colin Brown. I expect them to be very similar, if not DL a sniff quicker in terms of what we've seen so far today. So I think DL just winding up here.
As it stands, the top 4 in Pro-Am would advance, but again, all of this is pending that sort of Damocles that hangs over this session. We don't know for sure about the drivers and teams that only will have 2 cars that set times due to the red flag at the end of Q1. Everything we're conveying to you is very much provisional as Colin Brown goes 2 wheels off, pushing the envelope, chasing that Wright Motorsports Porsche, not just in this session, but also for the championship in Pro-Am.
Personal best Sector 1 and Sector 2. He doesn't need this traffic to thwart him here. Critical here that he finishes off this lap while he's still got some sweetness in those Pirelli tires.
Jan Halen in front of him in the 45.
They're in the thick of the mix for that Pro-Am championship, led by the 45 team. 0-4 trying to chase after them, running second in the standings right now.
And that's the 10th place car. That's the bubble car.
Brown did a 23.2, but you have to think it might have been more if he had not run up on the back of Halen there. That seemingly would have cost him at least some time.
You have to think that Halen's smart enough to know the big picture of I'm not going to cut him any favors right now. That may be enough to knock us out and put him into that top 10.
Well, and the other car that's in that Pro-Am championship hunt is in right now. Christina Nielsen, currently driving for Racer's Edge. She and that team, they're 8th as it stands. And there are 15 points total separating those 3 cars coming into this final race, which pays at 50 points to win. So there's a lot to play for between those 3 teams.
Boy, looking at that cut line for the top 10 in the Pole Shootout, Jan Halen and the 45 crew were at 124.1 on average. Colin Brown and his bunch, well, put it this way, 124.162 to 124.169. And a moment ago, that was the difference between getting into the top 10 or being out. Now both have been bumped.
Yeah, Dial's back in. As I said, he didn't have a representative lap. He's just run a 122.9, which put them back into the top 10 on average.
Halen just coming around, had a good lap the last time by, but not enough to change anything meaningfully with the average. Did a 22.6. Right now, Dial in that bubble spot for Triarsi Competizione, but it is tight. 74 thousandths of a second between 10th and 11th. Harry Gottsacker on the outside looking in right now.
It's Pierre Berger aboard the 08 car running in the M class this weekend with David Askew and Scott Smithson.
Using all of the track and then some.
Quite a bit of experience, so he's kind of one of these sneaky bronzes who they've been searching the globe for to draft in for this 3-driver lineup for the Indy 8 hour.
Yeah, he was in the 4-driver lineup that won their class at the spot 24 hours. George Kurtz and a female Saudi driver I've never heard of before named Rina Jafali were on that crew with Dirk Mueller, I think, as the 4th driver, and they won.
This is interesting. AF Corsa, neither of their cars have set laps yet. Molina is now out. Fuoco, though, still in the pits. They did not get laps in Q1, but effectively going back to the well with that same strategy of waiting as long as possible in this 3rd session.
Sorry, Tim Mueller was the other driver in that foursome.
Still Dial and Triarsi on the bubble. Top 4 in Pro-Am, all through to the Pole Shootout provisionally. Again, pending a final decision about what to do with those that could not set times in Q1 due to the red flag.
Here with Colin Brown again, his fastest lap, 123.2. He needs to be in the mid to high 25s to even have a shot at that top 10. Don't think the speed is there in the car right now. Dominic Baumann had success here on North American soil with the Lexus team a few years ago. Very, very fast here, but there's another team that's just got 2 drivers to lay down their lap, having missed that first session, so they'll be towards the tail end of this field, I believe, if the rules are going to be incorporated with what was read in the sporting regs before the weekend.
Well, one element where there might be the little bit of wiggle room is if a red flag came out or there was some reason why you were prevented from being able to set a lap. In this case, though, they had the chance to go and run, and a little bit more communication coming through to me. That's something that's being reviewed at the moment. If the teams are deemed to have had a chance, and in my estimation at least they did, then they should not basically get a get-out-of-jail-free card. And they took the risk by electing to keep the car in the pit lane. And that would be my interpretation of the rules coming in. But again, we're waiting for official confirmation.
It's like going out in group qualifying in another series, and all of a sudden everybody wants to be the last man on an evolving track, and you get 6 or 8 cars all bunched together.
That's Brian Hughes, race director, talking to the Craft Bamboo team. Darrell O'Young, his back is to us with the Craft Bamboo jacket on the right-hand side of the screen. Great driver in his own right, team principal for the team. They're having a chat about this, and Amanda has sent me a message saying that that's the gist of the conversation is you had your chance, you chose not to go. So we'll see if that's indeed what ends up happening. But right now, we're not seeing much change here. I think we've seen the sweet spot worn out of these Pirelli P0s as we approach nearly 45 minutes of running across the 3 qualifying sessions. Let's remember that. And there is a AF Corsa car off, and that's damage to the right rear.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and that's on the entry to pit lane, I believe. See how this evolves. Oh, he's going to get hit.
Molina's going to come back. Oh. Yeah, you might say.
Is that Oberlin?
Yeah.
Sure, there's damage to both cars then.
Broken right rear suspension.
Good news for Oberlin and the 94 Bimmerwell group. They're currently 4th overall, so it shouldn't affect too much unless he gets a call for avoidable contact. It was pretty unnecessary from both those guys to get into it like that.
Molina came over and Oberlin tried to pass him at the same time.
Well, I think Molina had gone in there deep. He was running very wide. Bill had basically cut underneath him, and then Molina wanted the line back.
Red flag. And that will curtail any last gasp attempts to sneak into the top 10. That, for the moment, is great news for Triarsi Competizione and their number 13 Pro-Am entry. It looks like they are going to be safely through, again, unless a change is communicated to us about how to handle the 2 driver cars.
Great news for Andretti Autosport, too. That's really strong after the day they were having to line up 6 right now. All of their drivers very evenly matched. Westphal did a 123.38. Briscoe marginally quicker, a 123.36. And Jared Andretti, a really solid 123.69 up against drivers who have a ton more experience than him. So that's a really solid lap by Jarrett.
I believe prior to this weekend, the only laps he's ever had in a Ferrari 488 were a couple of test days out at Sonoma about a month or so ago that they did in preparation for this event, and that is the celebration. But the Conquest crew knows their job is not done. They still have to make sure this car is prepped and ready to go for Pole Shootout, 4:55 local time, just a few hours from now. They'll have a chance to go for pole along with 9 of their closest friends. And it was close in this qualifying session. This is the car that just missed the cut. Harry Gottsacker finished it up. Nick Whitmer and Samantha Tan, the other 2 drivers, they end up 11th, and that should be where they start.
Yeah, fastest of the, although the only Silver Cup entry, so.
22.9, that is a pretty hairy lap for Harry Gottsacker.
I love it, Bob. A hairy lap by Gottsacker. That's cool.
Learned that from my British friends.
Checkered is out on qualifying for the 3rd annual Indianapolis 8-hour. And the cleanup of Miguel Molina's AF Corsa car continues. It was not a great session, not a good qualifying for AF Corsa across the board. You can see both of their cars down 19th and 20th.
Not a great weekend.
No?
Yeah, really.
Stuck one in the fence. This is a backup chassis we're looking at there, the 51 car. Their primary car was damaged very early in the going here in free practice when Pierre Ragg thought the corner on the front straightaway was easy flat on his out lap, and it was not.
That's exactly the way he described it to me. I had lunch with him today. Asked him how to pronounce his name. Rag. And what about this crash? I thought I could go fast. And I did. Pow! I mean, that's a pretty cool story about getting that, you know, another car ready. Just load the gun and fire it again.
Well, hey, of course, they are always ready for any contingency.
They are. They're a remarkable crew. And there is a note of irony in all of this, in that the GT4 field has been removed from this race, so we have a smaller field for the Intercontinental GT Challenge. And the thought was there would be fewer, less experienced drivers, let's say, in the field, and fewer incidents as a result. Good luck telling that to Miguel Molina.
No shortage of experience on either side of that coming together.
Absolutely.
Miguel.
Bill Arberlin, too. I mean, winningest driver in IMSA history.
Highlights of Q3, and that was the contact that brought an end to the session between Ferrari and BMW. Hagler for Racer's Edge. They will have to start from further down the order than they would have hoped. 15th overall. Sorry, here's the contact between the two.
Yeah,
Major
damage. Not the first time they shook hands, as it were.
Past proved to be prelude in this case. Let's hear from Amanda, who might have an update on the rules for us. What have you found out, Amanda?
Well, it was the interview with Raffaele Marciello that kind of set us in a little bit of a tailspin, and you got to give it up for a team for trying to find any advantage they can in a rule book, and it came down to the and or ors of the rule book. But with the drivers meeting today, it was expressed that we would try to give 15 minutes, if possible, whenever possible, in the qualifying. However, the drivers briefing will trump the sporting, and qualifying one is considered done in the rules of race control. Unfortunately for the 77 and the other cars that did not attempt qualifying when they could have, they will have a blank slot in driver number one.
Okay, so that does mean then our top 10 are as we see on the screen. Thank you for the update and the clarification on that. And frankly, that's how we expected it to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes zero sense the other way.
That's the only fair solution.
Yeah, it's a shame, but the good news for us at least is we got some fast cars starting at the back tomorrow. And we're going to have some fun watching them make their way up through the field.
Good point. There's going to be some fireworks there early, and it's a strong field. It's not like those teams and drivers a second a lap faster. They're just a few tenths. They're going to have to fight their way through there carefully.
So I say this, and I mean it. These are provisional results, so take that and run with it. But there you can see, for now, the top 15 from this combined qualifying session with 3 drivers averaged all together. Conquest, K-Pax, Windward, Bimmerworld, and K-Pax, the top 5. Great mix of manufacturers all throughout this field and inside the top 10. ST Racing came close. They were 74 thousandths of a second across a 3-driver average for making it into the top 10. Instead, they'll be watching pole qualifying with the rest of us. This is the rest of the group. We had one car, the 63, not able to answer the bell for qualifying. We'll see them, though, for the 8-hour tomorrow. All right, pole shootout, coming your way at 4:55 local time later on today. We hope you join us for that. But for now, for Amanda, Cal, and Bob, I'm Ryan. So long from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.